All right, so we're going to get the quarterback showdown of the year, Hendon Hooker versus Bryce Young. It sure looks like it may happen this weekend, Tennessee and Alabama. Gosh, I just learned English. It is up to the second college football, Season 2, Episode 7, presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. We want to remind you to have fun out there with Academy Sports and Outdoors. I am David Nuño, and right here we've got Kennedy Smith. Can you tell me whose headphones you're wearing?
Let's not talk about it, because mine are MIA, and these might be Olin's, and that scares me.
Yeah, there's a rule. I just don't do the show if I have to use somebody else's headphones, but she's a trooper, so...
I'm willing to get in the trenches to get the job done, and that's just a different level of dedication that you wouldn't understand.
No, you're right. I wouldn't, but I do understand that you... What is it called? The tie-down? You know
tie-down roper?
Show everybody how you do that.
Well, okay, so I'm going to have a guest on later in the show, Shane Hanchey, and he is a pro tie-down roper. So what he does is he's on his horse. He ropes him. He runs off. Body slam, and then grab 3 legs, and then...
Are you embarrassed that you just did this and it's going to be a TikTok video for the world?
I don't care. I'm actually really proud of myself. So, back to football.
Yes, ma'am.
Who is playing for their season this weekend? Because we're at the halfway point, and I know some of these teams are just like hanging on for dear life. Yeah,
so Kentucky, they've lost a couple straight. They were the number 6 team in the country. They were absolutely playing for their season, at least what they expected the kind of year to have. They need this game against Mississippi State. Arkansas. Everybody loved Arkansas in the preseason. And I love KJ Jefferson. He's awesome, but they've lost 3 in a row.
And I love Pittman.
And do you love BYU?
No.
Because BYU is also playing for their season, and they're taking on Arkansas. So those are a couple storylines that I'm following there.
Well, what are some of the keys in the Tennessee-Alabama game?
Well, Tennessee's really good at stopping the run. Alabama's excellent at running the ball. But I think the real key is and if Bryce Young plays, obviously, that changes the story. But if he does play, how does Tennessee's secondary do against Alabama? Tennessee's given up like 306 yards a game in the air. Well, they're not taking on the Heisman Trophy winner. If he is healthy for this game, that's the key. How do they respond to that? Because they've really struggled with the pass.
Right. Well, on today's show, we have Chad Withrow from Outkick 360, along with an Alabama insider, Mississippi State insider, and our pro tie-down roper, Shane Hanchey, a big LSU football guy. So we've got a good episode coming up for y'all. This is Up to the Second College Football.
All right, super excited about our next guest who knows the SEC backwards and forwards. Outkick 360's host Chad Withrow joining us here to talk about all the big storylines in the league this weekend. What's going on, man? How you been?
Doing well. It's been a fun fall so far. A lot of ups and downs. I know, especially in your neck of the woods, but it's definitely been eventful so far in the SEC this season. So I'm having a great time. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, man. So I want to talk A&M with you in a moment, but let's start off with the big marquee matchup. You've got Alabama and Tennessee. I don't know if anybody's playing better than Hendon Hooker right now. Bryce Young probably going to play in this one. Alabama looks vulnerable. Tennessee keeps answering questions. What's your gut in this one?
My gut is that Alabama's still a lot more talented than Tennessee, and they probably win a game something like 38-30. I think it's going to be somewhat close, but I think Alabama's still the more talented team. But this is the first time in a long time that you go into this Tennessee-Alabama game believing that Tennessee's got a puncher's chance to win the game, especially at Neyland Stadium. College game day will be there for the second time in 3 weeks after being there for the Florida game. So there's a lot of positive momentum for Josh Heupel in this program. You mentioned Hendon Hooker. I think he's right there for the Heisman Trophy right now, almost halfway through the season. I think it would be a huge upset if he's not in New York City as a finalist by season's end. This Tennessee offense is cooking. Josh Heupel knows how to coach offense. He's done a great job with the touch of this team and making sure that he's hitting all the right notes. But I look at Alabama, and I believe Bryce Young is going to play in this game. And my initial thought is that's just going to be a little bit too much for Tennessee. Now, if it's Jalen Milroe again, I would give Tennessee a much better chance at pulling off the win at home. But there was a reason that I think it opened as an 8.5-point line in favor of Alabama, and it's since gone down to 7.5. But either way, it's going to be a great game on Saturday and certainly a great atmosphere at Neyland Stadium.
Chad, is it fair to say that while I think Georgia and Alabama and even Ohio State are the top dogs out there, but in the SEC, both divisions are potentially there for the taking? If it's Ole Miss, if it's Mississippi State in the West, if it's Tennessee there in the East, I feel like it's there. It's available.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still I think the drop-off has shrunk. And what I mean by that is there's Alabama and there's Georgia, and then there is a drop-off, and then there's the other teams that are in contention. You know, in the East, it would be Tennessee at this point. In the West, you nailed it, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. But I don't think the drop-off is as sizable as it was a year ago, especially in the case of Georgia, who, while they're undefeated and they're still a great team, they've shown some cracks this year. Bama, really, for a second straight year, we saw it a year ago. I was there in College Station when A&M upset them. But there were other games where the game was closer than it should be. I remember a game in Gainesville against Florida where Alabama has just uncharacteristically made mistakes the past couple of seasons, whether it be penalties or turnovers that we haven't seen a lot from a Nick Saban team. So I believe that Alabama, because of their mistakes, is a little bit more mortal than they've been in recent years. And Georgia, I don't know if it just wasn't showing up or legitimate cracks on defense, but they showed against Sean Lewis's Kent State team that an offense like what Josh Heupel runs, they could be susceptible against in giving up a lot of yardage in that game, and then really just no-showed against Missouri and had to come back and hold on for the win. So I still think it's Georgia, Alabama, and then everyone else. But I think that separation from the then everyone else has shrunk a bit this season.
Chad, from an A&M perspective, I feel two things can be true. Huge disappointment. This is a program in year 5 under Jimbo that should not be 3-3. Yet super excited about what these young guys are doing right now and maybe turning the corner here for this season. Not saying that they're going to win every game, but that's certainly possible with this roster and what's ahead.
Yeah, I look at A&M, and obviously there's talent there, and there's a lot of young talent with that recruiting class that came in. And they're a good team defensively, and that's where their athleticism and talent really shows right now is on defense. I think they're honestly Jimbo Fisher firing himself as offensive coordinator away from being right there in the SEC West with a chance at surpassing Alabama. I mean, that's the one thing I see that is missing is if Jimbo Fisher decides to sort of humble himself a bit and say, this isn't working offensively, I need to go in a different direction, and goes in and hires a Kendall Briles, for example, just the name I'm throwing out there, that's a bit more of an innovator as an offensive mind, then I think that A&M is going to take a big leap up because it's the offense that's the problem so far. So I can understand the excitement from Aggie fans about the future with the young talent. But now the challenge is, and we're going to see this across the country with every program, when you struggle and if you struggle, making sure that guys stay involved, stay interested, and you don't want people jumping ship because they had one tough season, which unfortunately I think we're going to see a lot more of with an open transfer portal. That would be what I would guard against if I'm A&M. But if they keep the young talent on the roster and they make a move to a different offense and a different offensive coordinator, there's no reason that A&M can't be where we thought they might be this season, next season.
Absolutely. Talking to Chad Withrow here on Up to the Second College Football. Ole Miss, I'm really fascinated by them because I'm not really sure who they've beaten. I know they beat Kentucky, but yet they've kind of redefined their offense. They're running the ball so effectively. Like, how legit is Ole Miss this year?
It's crazy with Lane Kiffin because I keep thinking to myself, how much does he have to win at Ole Miss before I feel like he's happy to be at Ole Miss? Because there's this weird thing where he just makes, and it's kind of his personality, I know, but he's commenting on students leaving early and not having an atmosphere in the second half, and he publicly flirts with every job that comes open. And I'm thinking to myself, what is so wrong with you at Ole Miss? I mean, you went to the Sugar Bowl a year ago. They're on a path to go to another New Year's Six bowl game possibly this season. And I know that their schedule is going to get a lot tougher, but here they are undefeated. They should remain undefeated after this upcoming week. I mean, it's just he's built a really good program at Ole Miss. And you're right, they've done it a number of different ways. Matt Corral and that offense is completely different what we're seeing with Jackson Dart and Zach Evans and this rushing attack now for Ole Miss. So I look at the program being led by Lane Kiffin, and I think, why is he not completely happy right now at Ole Miss? And then I see what they've done so far this season and think they're every bit as dangerous as every other team we've talked about in the conference. So
KJ Jefferson should be back for Arkansas. At least that's the feeling out there in Fayetteville. But this is a team that could easily, and I hate saying it that so blunt, but they could easily lose 4 straight because BYU's that's a weird timing for a game too.
Yeah, I saw that they're I feel like that game opened as maybe BYU as a slight favorite, and now I think it's Arkansas -2 last time I checked. Very strange game. When I saw this, when you're going through the preseason schedule and I see a mid-October trip to Provo, Utah for Arkansas, very strange timing. BYU's coming off a tough loss on the national stage in Vegas against Notre Dame. So I think Arkansas is in a tough spot here. I think they are going to lose their fourth straight this weekend against BYU. And they've really been the media darling since Sam Pittman got there. And I get it with what he's done with that program. And seemingly he's done everything in his image, which is also Arkansas Razorbacks' image. And it fits culturally to perfection to what Arkansas wants. But they're lining themselves up right now for what's going to be a disappointing season. It's another one of those programs like A&M that the hope is that you just don't lose perspective or lose touch with what's made you successful. And I think that's top down. That's coaches convincing themselves of that, and coaches convincing the players of that as well. Because, situations like we saw at SMU that's happening mid-season, I fear more of that in the future. And I think this may be what we're going to have more once we get to the offseason, with some players who just aren't happy to be mediocre record-wise at the school they're at, and they're going to try to find greener pastures. And as we know, it's not always greener on the other side.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. Here, last thing for you. In the short term, who do you think is set up for more success, Florida or LSU? Long term, I think that's a longer discussion, but at least for what you see the rest of 2022.
I think probably Florida. And I say that because if I had to pick a quarterback that can truly change a game, it's Anthony Richardson. Now, the downside of that is Anthony Richardson can also change a game the other way. He's got the capabilities of doing that. But with what we saw in the game for him against Utah, what we saw against Tennessee, that was his best performance as a quarterback, even in a loss. He was terrific in that game throwing the football. We haven't seen that level of accuracy from him with any consistency. But I'm looking at I think a lot of things are equal with those two programs right now and where they are. They've got some good talent, but they have no depth. They've got some top-end talent, and that's it. There's a bit of a disconnect with new coach and the roster that they inherited. There were some quick fixes that were tried to be made at both programs to bring in transfers. There's a lot of similarities there. So I'm going to give the tiebreaker to Anthony Richardson over Jaden Daniels in that situation, because I think he's more of an impact guy at quarterback. So I'll take Florida over LSU, but just slightly.
Chad, great stuff, man. Let's do it again.
Hey, always fun. Thanks for having me on the show.
Need a new grill? Academy Sports and Outdoors is the destination for your outdoor cooking needs. With our free in-store assembly and pre-assembled grills and smokers, buy online at academy.com and pick up in-store. So keep those grilling plans at Academy Sports and Outdoors.
I was there in Tuscaloosa for a big one. Alabama versus A&M came down to the final play of that one. Good stuff, and let's break that down, plus look ahead at what Alabama has with Tennessee. Hendon Hooker versus Bryce Young. We hope we get that matchup. Are we going to get it? We'll talk to an expert on there, Tony Tsoukalas, managing editor there of TideIllustrated.com, joining us. Tony, what's going on, man?
Hey, man. How's it going?
Good. So what a game. We've gotten used to – I know a couple years ago in 2020, that game got out of hand, but it was a good game till the half. And but this A&M and Alabama series really living up to the hype in this past one when most people didn't think it would.
How often does a team walk off two straight games? And it looked like Texas A&M was going to do that. Two walk-off wins in a row. So that was going to be an interesting storyline. Both games were great. Alabama doesn't get a lot of these great games during the regular season. So if this is going to be a norm, I'm going to be looking forward to this Alabama Texas A&M series moving forward. I could use a lot of these games.
So what's the report on Bryce Young? The talk was if they needed him, which I felt like they almost did need him after those turnovers against A&M, he could have probably come in. What are you hearing about him, about that, and with this Tennessee game?
He asked to come in, or he was, that's what Nick Saban said after the game, that he was kind of asking that he wanted to come in late in that A&M game. There's nothing official yet. They're going to test him out. They're going to go through practice. It's looking more that Bryce Young's going to play than he isn't. I think you might have even been able to play him against Texas A&M because he did throw that week. But I think what Alabama is looking at is they don't want to risk him really re-injuring the shoulder or causing any kind of big damage. And Bryce doesn't want that either. So I think it's going to be like, if he's safe to play, I think Bryce is going to play. He's a gamer. He's not going to want to sit out, which is going to be the biggest game of the year of the regular season, which will be Tennessee. He's going to want to play if he can play. So I think it's going to come down to comfort. And also if Bryce feels that he can be full effective Bryce, because the last thing Alabama needs is to march him out there when he's not ready, and then to make mistakes in a game like this. But if you ask me to make a guess, just based on gut feeling, I would go with Bryce Young being able to play against Tennessee.
How much of a drop-off was Jalen Milroe? Because I know he had the fumbles, right? But those I felt were created as opposed to him making big mistakes. He didn't pass for a lot of yards, but he did he did run for quite a bit of yards on that A&M defense. So was there a significant drop-off in your opinion?
I mean, yeah, because you went from the Heisman Trophy winner to a guy that was, as Nick Saban said it yesterday, was playing with a lot of anxiety. And I don't think Jalen Milroe is as bad a passer or, is as far away as a passer as he showed against A&M, but he played like, kind of like a redshirt freshman would play in that situation. And a lot of times, Alabama's obviously wants that standard to be higher than that. But I think when you look at Jalen Milroe, if he did have to go to Tennessee, I think you definitely change things up a bit. He's a capable quarterback, and you can't ignore the things that he did do, right? He did throw 3 touchdowns in his starting debut, and he did run for 83 yards. And that's, in college football, they take away the yards on sacks, which he got a couple sacks. So, he's a guy that can hurt you with his feet right now. I'm not sure he's a guy that can hurt you with his arm yet, unless he just makes some significant improvements in the next week. So yeah, there is a drop off between him and Bryce Young. But there really is a drop off between Bryce Young and any quarterback in the nation, except for maybe a handful of them.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Let's talk about Hendon Hooker, the best quarterback that you guys are going to face, or Alabama's going to face this weekend. This really, I'm not saying it's going to determine the Heisman, but we're talking about a guy that is, really at the top of that list right now.
If he can beat Alabama, I think you put him right up there in that list. Then he's going to have a game against Georgia as well. So that will be, Hendon Hooker has an opportunity, to make a run at the Heisman, and he's a guy that hasn't turned the ball over. And that's the biggest thing I look at in this game is he hasn't thrown that interception, and Alabama has had a hard time creating turnovers itself. So I think that's a big thing. Alabama's going to have to get more turnovers. They lost the turnover battle 4-1 to Texas A&M. You don't win big games like that. It's a surprise that they beat a team like A&M with having that turnover margin the way it is. They're -6 in turnover margin through 6 games, and that's just not Alabama football. So I think it starts with they're going to have to put pressure on Hendon Hooker, and they're going to have to force him into mistakes.
Jahmyr Gibbs, before the season started, I was shocked that he was getting, Heisman love and that kind of attention because of what he had done at his previous stop. But watching him up close, what a game changer. That guy really is legit. What have you seen from him this year?
He's kind of like an Alvin Kamara type. You know what I'm saying? He's not the big bruising back that Alabama's had in recent years, but he can do everything. And actually, it's been really impressive. The last couple of weeks, he's been getting, north of 20 carries. That's not something that he typically does. And that's something that Alabama's called on him to do, especially with running the ball more after Bryce Young got hurt. He's a guy that can hit a big play. He's not necessarily a power back. And if you need that, I think if you needed that like 1 yard at the goal line, maybe he's not your option. But he can do so many things with it, whether it be catching the ball, whether it be, running the ball. He's really kind of stepped out as a runner. But, earlier in the season, he was, I know he was Alabama's leading receiver against Texas, you know what I'm saying? So he's a guy that can kind of like swing out of the backfield, or you could line him up in slot. Alabama does a lot of 2-back formations where they bring in Jace McClellan and then kind of have Jahmyr Gibbs out wide. There's just so many things you can do with him. And this Alabama receiving core hasn't gotten a lot of separation. So having a playmaker like Jahmyr Gibbs just kind of throw in there, it's been essential.
What is the outlook for the future of this program? Well, this program, no, but next year, the immediate future. Like, what's the situation at running back? Who's coming and going? Like, is it as bright as it always is, or is there concern?
Oh, I think it's as bright as it always is. And then you also got to think about the transfer portal, too. Like, the fact that they brought in Jahmyr Gibbs just shows you that, like, if they have a weakness at any area, they can bring in that caliber of player. But as far as running backs, it kind of depends on who leaves. Alabama's running back room is stacked, even if without Jahmyr Gibbs. But, if just Jace McClellan leave, or does he come back? And if Jace McClellan comes back, I think he's definitely a really elite running back next year. The wide receiving core has a bunch of players that are just good. I think they just haven't broken out yet. They haven't shown that consistency. So I think that will actually be better next year. Quarterback position. I know Jalen Milroe didn't look, anywhere close to Bryce Young last game against Texas A&M, but I really do think that he could be something special. If he progresses up with the passing, you've seen what he can do with his feet. He's a better runner probably than anybody Alabama's ever had, and that's saying something because Jalen Hurts, could really move with the ball. So I think that, they've also got Ty Simpson. They're bringing in 2 highly rated quarterbacks in Dylan Lonergan and Eli Holstein. So, I mean, they've got a lot of options there. They'll have to find one. Obviously, the future of that offense will be there with that. You go to the defensive side of the ball. You look at, you're going to lose Will Anderson, but you still get to keep Dallas Turner, which is crazy. And he's going to be that new Will Anderson kind of guy. You got a lot of young guys in the secondary. Both your starting cornerbacks are second-year players. So, yeah, the future's still bright for Alabama, and they're recruiting really well. So, as long as Nick Saban's there, he's going to keep on bringing in the talent. But there will be some question marks next year for sure. I think that's pretty much everywhere around the nation, though.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, give me the keys to the game against Tennessee. What has to happen for Bama to come away with another victory?
Well, it's kind of I mentioned turnovers, and I think they're going to have to win the turnover battle. Or they definitely can't lose it the way that they lost it against Texas A&M. If you have Bryce Young back, I think it's a lot easier of a game. Not easier, but you can move the ball through the air against Tennessee a lot better than you can move it on the ground. So if they have Bryce Young, I think that's the key, is just attacking this Tennessee secondary. If they don't have Bryce Young, I mean, you still try to attack the secondary. You give Milroe that opportunity, but I think at that point, maybe you try to do more of a ground control game, play to Milroe's strengths, play to your strengths as a team. Alabama can really run the ball, and you just try to beat Tennessee. I know they have a good run defense, but you try to beat Tennessee's run defense and maybe try to take some of the air out of the game, because you don't want to get into a track meet with Tennessee without Bryce Young.
Absolutely. Tony Tsoukalas, as always, great work on the show, man. We appreciate it. Hope to see you soon.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
How about Mississippi State? They've been fun to watch this season, no doubt about that. Mike Leach bringing some defense, bringing a little offense as well. Let's talk to an insider. We've got Robbie Faulk here, who covers them for 247 Sports and Starkville Daily, the co-host of Thunder and Lightning podcast. What's going on, Robbie?
Man, nothing much. Just trying to make it through another week in the state of Mississippi.
So
it is.
Yeah, man, I know how it is. And by the way, I had such a great time when we visited there in Starkville. I look at this Mississippi State team, and I think you guys kind of expected a nice season, those close, and probably more than the national media, although some people were giving them a lot of love. But have they exceeded your expectations so far?
It's funny. This is where I predicted them to be at this point when predicting the season. But yeah, I think they have kind of exceeded my expectations a little bit. I thought they would lose to LSU. They did lose to LSU. But beyond that, the last 3 weeks has been as good as I've expected Mississippi State to look at this point in year 3 under Mike Leach. I've been impressed with how they've executed, the steps that they've made on the offensive side of the ball, the defensive playmaking that they've had. It's been a better team than I expected coming in the season, although they're right where I thought they could be.
I think that's a very fair assessment. And really, it starts with what Will Rogers does. Look, Mike Leach has always had a quarterback that fits his system, but this guy's really grown into that leadership role, and you can count on him on any play, doesn't get frazzled when the blitzes come. He's really handled it so well. Talk about his growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought this was a great fit for Will Rogers when he first came to Mississippi State. He did not commit to Mike Leach. He was committed to Joe Moorhead. And quite frankly, I don't think he would have been a great fit in that offense that Joe Moorhead ran. RPOs, you're gonna put a lot of pressure on your quarterback to run the football in that offense too. But this was just a match made in heaven with he and both Mike Leach, who actually recruited Will at Washington State. So when Mike Leach came in, there couldn't have been a better fit. And I think that showed in year 1 with Will being able to step in there as a starter, and I thought handle things pretty well. He was never really overwhelmed. There were some things that he had to improve on in year 1, but you could kind of see that this was a good fit for both him and Mississippi State. And every single year, it just seems like he's taken a step. And this year, he's performing as well as just about anybody has in that offense. I think at the end of the day, when his career is finished at Mississippi State, he's going to be the most prolific quarterback that Mike Leach has ever coached. And a lot of that is due to the fact that he's going to be a 4-year starter. But you can definitely see the growth there. You can see the comfortability that he has in this offense. You can see the comfortability that everybody else has in year 3. it's just being run the right way at this point. And I think a lot of that is due to Will Rogers, quarterback.
How about this defense? I think because it's a Mike Leach team, people don't ever focus on it. But this defense has been solid. Last year was solid, and this year's taken another huge step.
Absolutely. And, a lot of people are talking about the yards that they're surrendering. They give up almost 500 yards to Arkansas. But I don't think that's doing the defense justice in what they've done so far. Very good at forcing turnovers, as you guys saw in that A&M game. It's just very difficult to score on this team. They seem to be able to kind of settle in when they get inside the red zone. They played some really good red zone defense. I think they're behind A&M and Tennessee in the SEC in red zone defense, and they're a top 20 team when it comes to that stat. So they've been really good inside the red zone. They've been really good at making those plays. They had 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter against Arkansas last week to seal that game. They come up with some big sacks on third down, fourth down when they need it, some big tackles for loss. So the stats don't really tell the story when it comes to total defense of how good this unit has been under Zach Arnett, because he's going to be really aggressive. So you can expect some of those big plays but from the offense, but they're going to make their share of big plays too.
How difficult of a matchup is Kentucky considering where they were and the fact that they're really playing for their season now? They've lost 2 in a row, and this is a team that had much higher expectations than their play that is playing out right now.
Yeah, I think it's been difficult for Mississippi State to win at Kentucky. They haven't played very well there. In 2014, which was their last win there, they had the number 1 team in the country. They were coming off that win over Auburn. They went down there to take on a Kentucky team that I think won 5 games that year. Wasn't a great Kentucky team, but State really struggled for the first 2.5, 3 quarters in that game. And, had to recover an onside kick late. It was a tough ball game back in 2014. And now you've had 3 straight times up there where you've lost. It's going to be a tough ball game, but I don't know what to think of Kentucky at this point. The offense is not really there. They haven't been able to protect up front. The running game hasn't been very good, although I think it's better with Chris Rodriguez. Will Levis wasn't just setting the world on fire, and now he's injured. So who's going to play at quarterback? And if he does, how healthy is he? I don't really know what to expect. I think it's going to boil down for Kentucky to what they can do on the defensive side of the ball. If they decide to drop 8 like we've seen in the past few weeks, I think State's going to have a lot of success. If they're disguising their blitz as well and they're forcing Will Rogers into mistakes, then this could be a really interesting ball game. But Kentucky definitely has their backs against the wall this week. It's going to be really interesting to see if they fold here or they rally the troops, because I think it's going to go either way here.
Well, and Robbie, let's consider this too, the fact that Mississippi State does have Alabama next week. Alabama's got a big game this week. They're not looking ahead. And this is something you Mississippi State cannot take it for granted, but you really can't look ahead towards Bama right now.
Agree, and that's one of the dangers of playing in the SEC. You start looking ahead in that schedule, and most of these teams can beat you on any given night, especially when you're all comparable when it comes to talent. So, and you're playing on the road. Mississippi State's got to be focused. I think they will be focused because it's been difficult to win at Kentucky. They know that. And the last time they went there was, quite frankly, just an embarrassing performance by State in 2020 when they lost 28-3 or whatever it was. That was just a really bad ball game. They threw 6 interceptions. So I think a lot of those guys remember that. I think they know that Kentucky can be a dangerous team, and they know that they have to focus in on this game. You have a lot of veterans on this team, and I think that's going to help them moving into this week.
Well, they're not going to look ahead, but we're going to look ahead. Let's get you back on the show for that one as well, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you guys.
At Academy Sports and Outdoors, bikes for the whole family are just a click away. Buy online at academy.com with our free in-store assembly. Your next set of wheels, plus helmets, pads, and water bottles will be waiting for you at our in-store pickup counter. Get to the fun faster with our in-store pickup and free assembly at Academy Sports and Outdoors.
All right, guys, on now we have a very special guest with us. His name is Shane Hanchey. He is a world champion tie-down roper, 12-time NFR qualifier, and he's currently ranked number 5 in the world. And also, his wife Taylor is also ranked number 5 in the world in breakaway roping. And most importantly, he is a big LSU football fan. So I'm having him on here today to talk a little bit of football with us. But first, we need to talk about this weekend. It was a big one for you and your wife. Y'all are both coming off a qualifying weekend for NFR. How was that?
Yeah, no, it was great. Anytime we both make the national finals, it's something that we set out each year to do, and for both of us to be going in fifth is pretty cool. December in Vegas is our Super Bowl. It's our national title game. It's our college football playoffs. So anytime we can head to Vegas in December is a good thing.
Yeah, well, you are from Louisiana, born and raised in Sulphur, and tell me just about how your connection and love for LSU football started.
Well, growing up in Louisiana, you only have one college to root for, and that's LSU. So, no, but my cousin went to law school there. I had another cousin graduate med school there. One of my good friends growing up in high school ended up playing linebacker for them in 2011. So I've been following their recruiting class every year since about 2008, and it's just tradition for us. It's family. It's something that we're all love to do and born to do is pull for LSU.
It's in your blood. Well, LSU is going to Gainesville this weekend to take on Florida. They are both 4-2 records, and Florida has a 1-2 conference play record. LSU's got 2-1, so a little bit of a leg up there. How do you think these two teams match up?
Well, this is a very important game for us as fans. We really had our eye on Billy Napier as maybe coming in and taking over the head coaching duties, and we all knew that Woodward had his guy, but we all thought it was Napier. He comes from Saban, and everybody that we've heard say that he is pretty much similar to Nick Saban, only on the offensive side of the ball, and so that's something that we thought as LSU fans that we really needed is somebody, offensive mind, that can get us moving down the field. And we kind of thought that was our guy coming from ULL right there down the road from Baton Rouge. And come to find out, he went to Florida, and we got Brian Kelly, who I think was a home run of a hire. So this is a really big game for us as fans because it's almost head coach versus head coach. And, the last couple games, Coach Kelly's come to the media and said that he's gotten out coached. So we're really going to be looking at this game and watching, see what he does. And I think it's just going to be a big game for LSU. As far as the matchups, I think the Richardson kid for Florida is a playmaker. I think he gets an open space. He's going to be hard to tackle. I think he's been making good throws. I just think that if LSU just kind of stays in their game and on defense, and we got to have number 40 out there. Harold Perkins got to be out there. He's a game changer for a freshman. I think he's probably the best freshman in the country, and he didn't see that many snaps last week versus Tennessee, so we got to get him on the field and let him make plays.
Right, you were talking about the coaches, and we've seen two really big head coaching change-ups in these two programs. So tell me in particular, how do you feel Brian Kelly is doing so far with this Tiger team?
Yeah, I think he's done a great job so far. I think expectations have to be realistic this year. I don't think we were going to make the college football playoff. I don't think we were going to go and beat Alabama or beat these top 10 teams. I think this is a big year for some consistency, in this program. I think the last couple years, and look, 2019 from a fan perspective was well worth it. It was their greatest season I probably will ever watch. And, we went to Alabama and Tuscaloosa, and I was there and watched them win that one and then watched them in the national title game. So fast forward 2 or 3 years, we're in a rebuilding mode almost, as you would say. So I think fans need to be patient with Coach Brian Kelly. I think he's the reason. There's a reason Woodward brought him in, and it's to bring some stability to the program. And I think if we can get off the tracks and kind of keep going and get this stuff lined out, I think in the next few years we'll be hard to beat. I hope, but I really feel like Brian Kelly, once I put my emotions to the side and put my brain into it, I really feel like he's probably our best suitor, and I'm looking forward to the next couple years with him.
I don't know if you'll have an answer to this question, but it's kind of what's on everyone's minds. What is going on with this Tigers special teams?
Yeah, it's a head scratcher. That's the only coach Brian Kelly brought over from Notre Dame was Coach Polian, and we kind of all thought that the special teams was going to be rock solid, because he was bringing his guy over. And from the kickoff to against Florida State, it's been absolutely terrible. And we've tried to mix and match some guys, and I really don't know. I really thought our biggest hole in our special teams was going to be our place kicker. I really thought our field goal kicker, because how great Cade York was for us for the last couple of years. I mean, now he's hitting 60-yarders, in the NFL. So I just thought that was going to be our biggest hole. I never would have dreamed it was going to be our kick return or punt return or everything in between. So to me, that's the thing we need to fix the fastest. I mean, we've got playmakers all over the field, but if we keep giving these teams 7 points because we can't catch the ball or fair catch it, then we need to rethink some stuff.
Right, and you basically answered my next question, but I'll ask it anyways. All the pickers have different outcomes for this game. Sports Illustrated says that Florida's going to win. ESPN says that LSU is going to win. So what do you think the Tigers need to focus on to ensure that they win this game?
Yeah, playing in the swamp, especially at night, it's tough. I mean, it's an SEC crowd. We all know how them are, especially at night. The swamp's going to be rocking. I mean, Napier's going to have them boys ready to play. It's just going to come down to Jaden Daniels. If Jaden Daniels can make some throws down the field, let our playmaking wide receivers make some plays in space to open up the running game for us, I think we're going to have to score some points. And Jaden's going to have to rely on his arm and not his legs. And I really hope he can stay in the pocket, and we need to get Kayshawn going. We need to get Neighbors going. And I think Jack Bech is a huge part. I think get him back in the slot. Let's get him in space. That kid just seems to make plays. And I just feel like we got to have and trust Daniels to make some plays with his arm.
All right. Thanks so much, Shane. And excited to see how you do in December in your purple LSU getup.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Kennedy, you've shown me how to do the tie down. What about, what's another thing from the rodeo you could show us to do?
I could show you how to walk really well in heeled cowboy boots in dirt.
Is there such thing?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Oh my gosh. No. Y'all just wait and see when I become a rodeo announcer how blinged out my outfits are going to be.
You are going to do this, by the way. This is happening.
Oh, it absolutely is going to happen. And it's all about walking on the toes. You have to have really good calf strength. I don't know if you know about that. But
have you seen my calves?
Have you seen my calves?
I guarantee you my calves are bigger.
I don't know.
I mean, 1,000%.
D1 sprinter.
D1 dad.
Okay. We'll talk about this later.
We lost all of our viewers, but welcome to The View. Appreciate you so much for watching The View here. It's actually Up to the Second College Football presented by Academy Sports.
And Outdoors.
That accent, please do the whole show like that next time. Bye.